Chapter 1. Lightblessed. Sandar strove across the sun for 4 days. Unprotected, lost in the vast Falcin desert, he struggled along as he fled Praxin. By the third day, the blisters on his chest, face, and arms blistered and itched. When he scratched them for relief, pus leaked out as he prayed in desperation. Light's judgment gave him horrific scars. In the end, it was only so much light. Illyrian's Blessings, Passage 243. Trinea. What woke you? Illyrian priestess Rendress folded her hands above her mug and rested her chin upon them. Was it the storm? She watched her daughter as they sat in the rectory. Morning light filled the small, sparse room her mother used as an office. Also called the Red Priestess, or sometimes the Red, Rendress cared for and nurtured the populace in the ways of the light and the three tenets. I'm not sure. I remember having a dream. Trinea sipped some fresh tea and nibbled one of the biscuits her mother had brought in. I don't feel well. Drink up. It will settle your nerves, her mother said. The thunder woke me too. Trinea sighed. School would already be in session. She could tell by the height of the suns. Rendress smirked. You just realized that you're late for school, didn't you? Yes, Mama. You must still go. The thought of going there made her more ill. She glanced at her soiled nightclothes and the makeshift pillow on the floor she'd made with her rumpled cloak. Can I at least clean up first? Her mother's crisp red frock contrasted directly with her own appearance, and she blushed. A little humility might suit you today. You worried me. Yet you came here at your normal time. You didn't look for me? Oh, you're nearly an adult, love. I trust you to look out for yourself, Rendress replied. And here you are, safe and sound. She grabbed a dour gray cleaning dress from the utility closet and handed it to her daughter. I'd never hear the end of it from Miss Jessamine if I sent you in looking like that, however. She does not follow the light, as we do. Trinea's accusation gave her mother pause. What makes you think that? You don't have to sit through her sermons, Mama. She twists Illyrian's words. I can't understand why the others don't see it. She finished off her mug and chewed the last of her biscuit. She shouldn't be doing that. It's your place, not hers. I'll have a talk with her this afternoon. You're taking things a bit out of proportion, love. Trinea chafed at her mother's words. Shrugging off her nightclothes, she quickly put on the cleaning dress. She tied her sash into a bow as Rendress laced the back of her dress. There, now you look presentable. Trinea felt an odd tingle as Rendress brushed her daughter's hair back and trailed her thumbs down her cheeks. She watched her mother blink in confusion for a moment, then shake her head. Almost. What did you do? Trinea asked, confused by her mother's strange reaction. Nothing, Rendress replied, nonplussed. Just a little something to take your mind off the night. Trinea did feel slightly better. The unease of waking up disoriented in her mother's rectory dwindled as she began to dread her shameful walk to school. She smoothed the plaits in her skirts. Where are my shoes? Light's sake, Trin, her mother answered, picking up their sodden ruin from under a bench near the door. Seriously, where did you find this much mud? Trinea shrugged, embarrassed. It was dark? Take the shoes that go with that outfit, too, I guess. As for your penance, you'll be cleaning the rectory after school. If you're dressed to clean, you might as well do it. Trinea sighed, crestfallen. Of course, Mama, she said. Even as she put on the spare pair, her mother whisked off to her desk and began sorting through documents. Trinea tried to unrumple her cloak, but gave it up as useless before tossing it on and heading out. Fresh air and a gentle breeze, coupled with the sky cleared of the night's storm, raised Trinea's spirits. She could not recall the strange, dirty man's face with any clarity, nor any of her activities during her time with him at the chapel, though she tried. The ghost of a face in the memory of a dream haunted her thoughts. Dirt kicked up in her wake, unusual given the storm. There had been a storm, right? She wondered. I remember the lightning and thunder, but did it rain? Had the wind raged with tempestuous fury? Trinea noticed nothing out of the ordinary in the chapel grove, no fallen debris to mark the weather. Ahead of her walked a man reaching the edge of Laduria town proper, on his way to the market, she thought. He led a goat bearing overflowing bags of trinkets, pulling no cart or wagon. She thought it strange to see a lone merchant with few wares. When he turned to tend the animal, she saw he wore a leather thong around his neck, wrapped around a bundle of sticks nestled on his chest. Color warped around it, reminding her of heat rising from a fire, drawing her attention. She stood transfixed, unable to avert her eyes. He continued walking, breaking her line of sight with it. The sensation passed. She shook her head and moved on. Farms surrounded Ladoria for miles around. The Falson Desert created a treacherous barrier to the east, though she had never seen it. The town itself held a modest population of merchants and tradesmen, along with her small school. Everyone knew her mother, and by extension, everyone knew her. Most grew up and remained local, creating a tight-knit community. Ditan will never let me hear the end of it, she muttered. He was her best friend, and thinking of the short young goblin brought a smile to her face. I can hear him. Just because you're the priestess in training, you think you don't need school. Trinea continued down the worn road, distracted as she walked its familiar path. School ended in a few weeks, and her mother would resume training her once the fundamentals were out of the way. Most of her classmates would return to their family farms. Planting season had already arrived. Old Chet waved at her from the main landing of his inn, the Harvest Hearth. Late morning, Trin? She paused and smiled at him. Hey, Chet. She'd visited him frequently. Yes, I had a rough night and slept late. Trinea smiled. Picked an odd place to sleep, eh? I saw you coming up from the rectory. Hold on a moment. He stepped inside and came out with one of his savory sweet rolls. Might as well get to school on a full stomach. Everyone's feeding me today, she laughed. Mama rushed me off to school. I've got no money with me. Oh, hush. Your mother's good for it, I'm sure. He chuckled. Besides, I imagine Ditan won't turn a snack away if you don't want it, he added, eyes twinkling. Trinea took the gift graciously. I'm sure he won't, she mused. Thanks, Chet. May the light illuminate your path. Let it keep the darkness at bay, young miss. Enjoy school and say hello to that rapscallion friend of yours. She neared the town center. Carts and wagons sat side by side, tents erected to cover wares as townsfolk sold crafted tools to the farmers who made their way into the market. Trinea slowed, distracted by varying trinkets, both functional and artistic. At one cart, she saw the man with the goat gesticulating, haggling with Waris, the local cobbler. At another, she marveled at crocheted blankets to warm her sleep from the night's chill. Trinea made a mental note to tell her mother about them. She raised her eyebrows and shook her head as she passed, acknowledging she was already late for school. The wind still carried a light chill despite the warmth of the suns. She rubbed her arms. School loomed as she crossed the market square. What is the point of this? She asked herself. It's just more nonsensical indoctrination, she said, grasping the handle and entering. 12 faces turned. Miss Jessman watching with a disapproving stare as Trinea took her seat. Sorry I'm late, Miss Jessman, she apologized, blushing. I trust your excuse is better than your apology, Trinea. Miss Jessman's frustration stemmed from her annoyance at Trinea's status as the daughter of the Red Priestess, and Trinea knew it. It's probably better than your attitude, Trinea snapped, unusually harsh. The tension in the room at her arrival compounded her preoccupation with the previous night's events and her chagrin at being late. Even Trinea felt embarrassed by her short temper. Please, enlighten us, Miss Jessman countered. Her glare darkened. Trinea slouched into her chair. She hated coming to school since Miss Jessman's hiring. Somehow everything the woman taught sounded like Illyrian's teachings, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Trinea didn't understand why her mother allowed such contrary interpretations to continue. No one else minded. This irked her. Sit up straight, Miss Jessman commanded. I don't even want to be here, Trinea replied. You never do, Trinea. Since you're late, you've missed the start of today's lecture. You can share something you've learned during your tardiness. Several students snickered. Surely the light guided you. I said I'm sorry. Can you just continue? Don't mind me, she said. Your rudeness is unbecoming of your upbringing. I will exchange words with your mother after class, Miss Jessman warned. She's looking forward to it, Trinea muttered back. Way to antagonize her, Trin. She was already sour, Ditan whispered from next to her. She passed him the sweet roll, which he eagerly devoured. She started it, Trinea replied. Do you have something to say, Trinea? Perhaps you can tell us about the vigil. Jessamine stood with her arms across her chest. The vigil? What? No. Then be quiet, and let me teach the others who were considerate enough to be here on time. See? Sour, Titan reiterated, mouthful of food. She's insufferable, she seethed. Instead, she stared at a pair of butterflies dancing their rhythmic mating ritual outside the window. She found a small measure of serenity as they pursued each other before lazily dipping out of view. As I was saying, I was surprised to learn that the red here doesn't discuss shamans, Miss Jessamine continued. The Illumin Vigil's sentinels are enforcers of the Illyrian Council serving the Regency. They help restrain the shaman threat by eliminating these barbaric users of the elements. The unrestrained twisting of nature has ruined landscapes and destroyed cities, abuses the light strives to prevent. It is through the Vigil's sentinels that the Regency's peace has reigned for hundreds of cycles. When was the last time your mother summoned a cult, Trinea? Lost in her thoughts, Trinea pondered where the butterflies went to lay their eggs and where they'd come from. She smiled. Trinea preferred nature. Life meant existing in the world, not worrying about the theory behind Illyrian's words. Idle thinking at best, but it interested her more than Miss Jessamine's preening idol worship of the Regency and its Illumin Vigil. Rendress, her mother, was the extension of the Regency's power here, and she gave her teacher's words little attention. She scratched her cheek, then rubbed her arms again. They tickled and felt warm beneath her skin. Trinea wondered for a moment why these sentinels had come so far. Nothing of importance existed near Ladoria but farms, farmers, and poor tradesmen. She had no answer to Miss Jessamine's question. It barely even registered in her mind. She envied her classmates and their focus on the current discussion. It meant little to her. Miss Jessamine splintered her pointer across Trinea's knuckles, catching both hands with a single strike. Watch your butterflies tomorrow, Trinea. I asked you a question. At least pretend to care about this class. It is what you're here for. What? Light pierced through her hands, etching runes she didn't understand and couldn't read into her flesh, burning as they spread up her arms. The sensation dulled the pain, and she felt the same on her face, ribs, and legs. Their sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the classroom. No one had ever seen it before. She couldn't formulate an appropriate response while she tried to make sense of the situation. Lightblessed, Miss Jessamine hissed. The revulsion in her voice carried a slur's connotation. Confused murmurs babbled at once. Trinea locked eyes with Titan, then looked back at Miss Jessamine. An aura bloomed around her teacher's body, a sickly gray shot through with striations of red and black. Trinea's fear and confusion grew as similar auras appeared around the rest of her classmates, mostly darker, with similar hints of red, though white and yellow around Elaine, a slightly younger girl she disliked. She had never seen auras surrounding people before. Mortified by her shifting features, Trinea tugged her sleeves down, but it did not cover the glow from the runes, let alone her hands or exposed face. She heard chairs drag as others stood, and the door slammed as someone ran out. She saw the bewildered looks of her classmates struggling to comprehend her changing appearance. Terror, humiliation, and embarrassment filled her. Miss Jessamine loomed, fearful eyes wide and mistrusting, her dilated pupils a window to naked dislike. Trinea ran. She couldn't stay there any longer. The judgment of the others at her new appearance was simply unbearable. Light, what is this? She needed to get away. Voices rose behind her as she ran from the school and sped through the market. More eyes fell upon her, curious at the spectacle she made as she passed through, runes flaring. Curiosity, concern, and fear bore down on her. She felt it all, seeing auras appear around everyone, some shimmering, some unwavering, all aglow. Some were light, some were dark, some had hints of color. Her vision had changed to show her these things, an ocular sensory overload she tried to shrink from but couldn't. Where can I go? I can't go to Mama. I can't go home. Irrational guilt over events she could not control drove her thinking. She did not want to burden her mother. Rendress would not judge her. Instead, Trinea dwelt on the confused looks and the scared stares of her classmates and townsfolk, and her own embarrassment. She did not understand what had happened to her, and it terrified her. Already she felt ostracized by her community, though she'd spoken to no one. Trinea needed answers. I need to think. I need to hide until I can face whatever has happened to me. She left to the north, pulling her hood down to cover her face. She missed the man watching her pass by, observing her for a short distance before she left town. Cold and determined, the sentinel sat for a time, finished his drink, then departed Ladoria by a different road.